Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dice Must Flow, and today we're going to be entering the board game Timewarp and taking a look at Dune. Now Dune is, I think, from the 80s, Parker Brothers, for 2 to 4 players. I saw the news that came out last week that the Dune franchise gotten into a contract where they were going to release board and miniature and role-playing games, and it reminded me of the games that I had played, and so I'm going to be rolling those out over the next few weeks. So anyway, let's crack it open and see what's in here. First of all, there is a game board. Second, there are cards. So in the game, each player is going to represent one faction. You have the Harkonnens, the Fremen, the Emperor, and the Atreides. And each of these cards is going to have a number on it. And it's going to have the strength, which is, this is where the initial person's strength starts. And you use the clip to indicate their current strength. Each character comes with a corresponding token that you can punch. They punch out a picture of the character that you can put into the back, and you can see there's corresponding character tokens for each specific one on the game board. The game also comes with a variety of dice and tokens. So you've got 6-sided dice, which I think most people are familiar with, but this is one of the first sort of mainstream or Parker Brothers type games that had an 8-sided die, and so those came with that. These tokens represent spice harvesters, and these tokens represent spice, and you'll use your spice and your spice harvesters for actions later in the game. Moving forward, what is the objective of the game? Basically, the objective is to eliminate all of the other characters. So if you have the last remaining or only remaining character in the game, then you have won. One other component, a final component of the game, are these Canley Cards. These are things that represent equipment and stuff that you can use or help you in the game. So you can see there's like a sword for an equipment card, or poison, or there's going to be defensive cards, or just like this, a Hunter Seeker card. And these will be used at different times during the game. When the game starts, each player starts in their own siege, which in Dune is basically their own home territory. And while in your siege of your own color, you are safe from other players. Now this game plays a lot like Trouble, I guess, or other games, but basically you're going to roll 2 dice, and you can move one of your characters, in this case either a total of 10, or you can move 2 characters, one of them 6 and one of them 4. Okay? And then depending on what happens, these spaces will tell you what happens. If you land on a spice space, you collect 1 spice for each of your spice harvesters. If you land on a duel space, you can fight any opponent's character anywhere on the board. Or if you land on the worm space, you can attack an opponent's character in the desert or his or her harvesters. So you can attack his harvesters. And just like that, there's other spaces that you can move up to into the center. Or if you land on an opponent, then you have an immediate duel. So in this case, if this character was here and you roll a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you would have an immediate duel between the Baron and Paul Atreides. So how would you do a fight between the Baron and Paul Atreides? You would see that Paul has a strength of 4, the Baron has a strength of 3, is where they would start. Each player is going to roll 1 die for every strength they have on their character. So in this case, Paul would have 4 dice, and the Baron would have 3. Each player rolls the dice, the highest number rolled wins the round, and then the player who loses has to reduce their strength by 1. So in this case, we would have, the Baron would be rolling 3 dice, and his highest number, in this case, 2. So Paul would win this, and the Baron's strength would be reduced down to 2. In the case of a tie, you're going to be re-rolling all of this again. So once this is done, this is one little round of combat. And these combats then continue basically until one character is eliminated. So in this case we would go again with Paul having 4 dice, and this time the Baron only having 2 dice. And that would continue until one person's strength is reduced to 0, at which point the character is eliminated when their strength is reduced to 0. The winning character's strength is then increased by 1 point. After a player moves and or fights, then the next phase of the game is the buy phase. You can buy Canley cards, equipment cards, or harvesters. Each Canley card, equipment card, or harvester costs 1 spice, and it's payable to the spice bank, and so that would be paying these. Finally, after that, you can invest. And invest, as we move this over, we can see there's an investment track. And you can invest spice, and basically when a player rolls to move, in this case a 9, a 9 would pay 2 to 1 for the spice that was invested there. We'll go more into investing a little bit later. So in the buy phase, you may buy up to 3 cards on a turn, and each card's costing 1 spice. You may also buy up to 3 harvesters on your turn, with each harvester costing a spice. So when you buy a card, you're going to draw from the Canley deck, and you get your cards. So in this case, the shield protects you from laser guns. Our poison is an equipment card. So the type of equipments, they're in the game rule book here. But basically you have a sword, which is going to let you use 8-sided dice when fighting instead of that 6-sided dice. A Gam Jabbar is going to let you roll an additional 8-sided dice in addition to your fighting dice. The laser gun lets your character shoot an enemy character that is 1 or 2 spaces ahead of you. Shield, as long as you have the shield, you will protect you from laser guns. And poison allows you to attempt to poison an enemy character, but only after you've inflicted a point of damage. And finally, there's the Ornithopter card. And the Ornithopter card allows you to move your character to any other space on the board. And so, basically, when you buy cards, you buy these cards, you're going to be drawn randomly, and you'll have to then assign them to your character. So you can have up to 3 assigned. In this case, we showed shield, poison, shield were the 3 that I had drawn. So the Baron could have both of these, and they would be assigned, and when they're assigned to a character, they are shown up so you could see what they have. In this case, it's another poison. That shield can't be put onto the Baron, so you would have that held down in your hand. And then later on, if your character had lost an item for some reason, then you can pull your card and during the equip phase add a new equipment. So within this equipment deck, there's also the Canley cards. And you can see, unlike these, they're not going to be assigned to characters, and they're going to be placed down in front of us. So if you have duplicates, people don't know if it's really a Canley card or just a duplicate equipment. And there's the secret spice silo, which allows you to take spice from the bank. The hunter seeker, attempt to assassinate an enemy character with the card. Or the harvester raid allows you to steal harvesters from another player. You can only play 1 Canley card on your turn, and must play it before you begin the buying part of your turn. So you may have seen me holding this here, and they talk about making a deal. So you know, in the Dune universe, there was a lot of intrigue and stuff, so you can make deals with other players to use cards or run out of cards, or to not land, take spice to not land on somebody and fight them, all that kind of stuff. During the game, you may pay spice directly to the bank in order to raise your character's guile or to protect your harvester. For every 3 spice you pay to the bank, you increase your character's guile by 1 point. You may wish to raise your character's guile whenever your character is attacked by a sandstorm, a poison, or a worm. And we didn't talk about that a little bit. So earlier when I talked about the cards, this was your strength, but this is your character's guile. And so if you look at some of the cards, there's a worm card here. Attack an opponent's character in the desert or his or her harvester. So there's this sort of desert spaces, which are sort of the outside ring here that they're talking about. And so in the sandstorm, all players except you roll a 6-sided die, 1 for each harvester rolled. If any player rolls a 5 or a 6, the harvester is lost. Then all characters on desert spaces except character on the sandstorm or their own seats roll another 6-sided die. If they roll higher than the character's guile, the character is eliminated and remove from the board. So that's like huge. So it's like you can eliminate a bunch of characters that are out on the outer area that are not in their siege. The worm is choose one opponent to attack. Decide if the worm will attack one character only or all of that opponent's harvesters. Roll a 6-sided die for each character or once for each harvester. If you roll a 5 or 6, the harvester is lost and returned to the bank. On a character, you roll a number higher than the character's guile. And the character is lost and his all equipments are placed in the discard pile. So you can see it's really, this guile is going to be really important. So this is one of the reasons you're going to want spice. So you, when these things happen, you can pay the spice to buy protection, to raise your guile up, so you don't roll over that number. So just real quickly, we have the siege spaces. Again, those are these here, where you're safe on your siege space always. There is the duel, where you can choose an opponent's character to move to this space and fight your character. We already went over the worm and the sandstorm. Up in the inner area, there's these areas, which are the castle spaces. And you must pay a tax of 1 spice every time you land on a castle space, directly to the bank. So that's one of the reasons that keeps people out on the outer area. And so these spaces are, you have a spacing guild, move to any other castle space or desert space, and follow the instructions there. A smuggler, roll an 8-sided die and take the number of spice from the bank equal to the number rolled. Trader, roll a 6-sided die, take from any one opponent the number of Canley cards or equipment cards equal to the number rolled. You cannot look at the cards first. Take only the cards not assigned to a character. The Bene Gesserit, take 1 Canley card or equipment card from one opponent, assigned or unassigned. You may look at the opponent's unassigned cards. Opponent must give you the card you choose. So that's going to be extremely powerful when you're, you know that maybe you want to try and steal somebody's shield if you have a laser gun, so you can go on the Bene Gesserit and steal their shield. Poison. Choose one opponent's character. Roll a 6-sided die. The character is poisoned. If you roll higher than the character's guile, re-roll a 6-sided die to determine damage. And that reduces the character's strength by that. A spice raid. Choose any. Excuse me. Spice raid. Choose any one opponent to raid. If you roll an 8-sided die, and an opponent rolls a 6-sided die, if you roll higher, then take the difference in the number of spice. And training is going to raise your strength by 1 point. So I think we've covered most everything. I want to go back into the investment phase where you can invest. You're going to place your spice out here on these spaces, 5 and 9, 4 and 10, 3 and 11. And that, like I said, these spice lasts for every other player's turn. When it gets back to your turn, that spice is removed. So if you basically invested on Ivory with a 4 to 10, and it's a 3-player game, then the next 2 players, it would have 2 rolls. Player 2 would roll, then player 3 would roll. When it get back to your turn, if those didn't hit, those would be removed. But if they did hit, in this case, if you had 2 dice and you rolled a 4 out there, it pays 3 to 1. So if the next player had rolled a 4, it would pay 3 to 1, and you would get 3 times 2 or 6 spice back to you. And basically that's the game. They've got all these different equipments, like I said, that you have in Canley Cards. It's pretty much just roll and kill the other player. Plays very fast because you're really just eliminating people. You can see how you can eliminate them with guile, or combats, or not. A combat is not just 1 round. You know, if you could like fight like the Baron, and then he would lose 1 round and it would go down to 2, and then that would be the end of it. But it's like a fight to the death once it starts. This is the Parker Brothers Dune game. Very simple. It can't, as you can see from the pictures and everything, this was based on the movie when Dino De Laurentiis' movie came out in the early 80s, and based on the characters and everything, and all the pictures, Spacing Guild definitely looks like the Spacing Guild things that they had in the movie. So it's kind of a fun little game. You have to play with people that are not going to get upset with you as far as like eliminating. So in that sense, it's kind of a war game. You don't want to have anybody feel like, get their feelings hurt. So it is a token or player elimination game. And like I said, it's pretty simple, but it does introduce these 8-sided dice for some of the first time for some of the more simple games. And then you have the character concept. So it's kind of like Sorry, I guess, or whatever in that sense, where you land on people and eliminate them. But in this case, you just have a fight, and you have all the desert, Arrakis, and Dune theming of the game. So that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed this look back at the Dune adventure game by Parker Brothers. It's our latest jaunt into the board game Timewarp. And we will talk to you later. Thanks.